Be here. I am going to go ahead and start sharing my screen. I also want to thank Sean and Shireen, representing Atrium Health, as well as Duke Energy, for the sponsorship for the program. Additionally, I want to also recognize all the participants. I've recognized a few names, some I've worked with in the past. So it is wonderful to have you on the line this morning. Thank you for your time. So we do have a lot to cover this morning, but I do want your participation throughout this session. So we have, even though we're talking about diversity, equity, and inclusion, there are so many pieces to the puzzle. And it is a puzzle for some people. And so I hope that my presentation and the information that I share with you all today will allow you to have a better understanding and a broader understanding of things that we should be doing in the workplace. So thank you all for being here with me again this morning. And so, as I stated, we're going to talk about lots of different pieces of DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. But how to create an inclusive culture is one of the areas we will focus on this morning. So our main objectives is one, I will define diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. I will talk about how you should start DE&I programs in your organizations and what programs that you can start. Also, I'll discuss some of the benefits of DE&I as well as the B, because we're talking about an inclusive culture, as well as how to really create an inclusive culture in the workplace. And Sean touched on that a little bit just a moment ago. I will end with diversity recruiting, which may not be anything new for some of you all, although I do hope that at the end, as I talk about diversity recruiting, that there will be something, some insight that I'm able to provide for you as well. I added diversity recruiting as part of this presentation because oftentimes when I'm out working with organizations or I'm doing some training with some HR or DE&I leaders, there, especially recruiting, there's always questions about diversity recruiting because we're so used to doing things the way that we've always done it, but we got to switch it up just a little bit. So we'll talk there about that as well. I will pause throughout the session and see if anyone has any questions that I may be able to answer, as well as we have some time built in at the end to allow for questions as well. All right, so hopefully you all can see my screen and we're going to go ahead and get started. I'm going to move this over a bit. So most often when people think about diversity, the first thought is usually race or gender. And yes, while race and gender are definitely characteristics that make up diversity, it's not just race and gender. That's not it alone. Diversity is race and gender, but it's also age, is sexual orientation, gender identity, gender expression, sexuality, cultural backgrounds, disabilities, military statuses, past experiences. The list goes on and on. Different points of view, different socioeconomic statuses, our cultural backgrounds, and so forth. And disabilities as well. We don't want to leave disabilities and religions out, but oftentimes disabilities, and you may hear me say later on abilities, but oftentimes we forget. So diversity is just a broad mix of people with different characteristics. And you want a mix of people in your organization. When you go out into the community or walk into a local market or mall, think about what you see or who you see. You see people that are all different. And this is how we want our workplace to look. We need to mirror the communities in which we do business. So there are many benefits to ensuring a diverse workplace. And we'll discuss a few of those benefits here shortly. But keep in mind, the diversity piece is not it and it alone. People feel that, well, I have a diverse workplace. When I look around, people are different ages, they're different heights, they're from different places, but there's more to having diversity in our organizations. People feel that, once we have a diverse population of individuals, then we've done our work. But we need to put more effort into recruiting, as well as how we treat our people once we bring in new talent, how we treat our employees that work for our organization for a very long time. So again, it goes well beyond the recruiting efforts as well of getting a diverse population of employees. So that's where the equity, the inclusion, and the belonging come into the equation. So I'm going to move into defining equity. So historically, I've heard, and probably some of you have heard and used D&I, diversity and inclusion. And somewhere along the line, the E was added, equity. Equity is definitely a critical piece of diversity, equity, and inclusion, the equation. Equity should not be mistaken, although often it is mistaken for equality, but they are different. Equality means each individual or group of people are given the same resources. But on the other hand, equity means recognizing that each person has different circumstances, which results in the need to allocate the specific resources and opportunities needed to reach an equal outcome. So think about it from the perspective, let's say you have two children at home. One's 13 and probably seeing you eye to eye, and the other is maybe 5 years old. And you purchase a basketball goal. What might you need to do to ensure that both of your children, your 13-year-old and your 5-year-old, have an equal or equitable opportunity to make some hoops? Because you know what'll happen if you don't lower that goal. That 5-year-old is going to come storming back in your house, arms folded, crying, and you're like, go back outside and play. You all asked for that basketball goal. So that is an example, a real life example that probably some of us parents can relate to. So it is the same when it comes to the workplace. We have to recognize the need to redistribute power to create quality of being fair and impartial with how we treat our employees. So yes, we can have a diverse workforce and say we include everyone, but are we providing the same opportunities for our employees? We have to make sure we provide the same opportunities for everyone. With equity, we want to eliminate those barriers and inequities and provide equal access to equal pay, equal opportunities, equal training, and so forth. And so now moving to the I, companies and people need to embrace the inclusive mindset. And if we're making efforts to do the recruiting, diverse recruiting piece, and becoming a diverse workforce, then we don't do anything after that, our efforts are wasted. It will be pointless to hire people from diverse backgrounds, and then we don't have inclusion laid out very well. We'll lose great talent. It'll cost the company money because it's pretty expensive to recruit. It's pretty expensive when you have vacancies on your team and throughout your organization. Someone has to do the work. And it's also could jeopardize your brand reputation as well. So inclusion is including everyone in the organization, embracing an inclusive mindset, making sure everyone has a seat at the table. Many leaders will say, and I've heard them say to me, oh, I invite my team every time I have a meeting. My entire team has to come. I make them come. But ask yourself now, what are you doing daily to create an inclusive culture? Inviting them to the table is just a small piece of it. So everyone needs to feel like they belong, needs to feel valued and included, okay? Not just invited. I heard someone say a few years ago, inclusion is inviting someone to the dance, but belonging is asking them to dance. So let's not just include individuals because that's what we do, but we really want to make sure our employees who are included also feel valued and accepted. So I like to look at the D, the E, and the I as like a mathematical equation. You've got your diversity, equity, and inclusion. And they all intercept, as you can see on this Venn diagram. They intercept because the acronym realistically takes every piece in order for our organizations to really foster diversity, equity, and inclusion. So on the right side of the equation is the B, the belonging. The belonging. And a lot of organizations get the D, we get the I, don't quite understand the E maybe, but the B piece is very important as well. And so belonging is engaging a person's full potential, really hearing what a person has to contribute. So again, inclusion is inviting them to the meeting, but belonging is making sure they have a voice and a platform in the meeting to share. They have a sense of support and acceptance as well. You want people to be fully engaged at work, and we have to foster an inclusive environment. It is important for all of our employees to feel like they are valued, to be accepted, to be welcomed, and to be part of the team. So for people to feel like they belong, the environment, which in this case, the workplace, should be diverse and inclusive. Okay. And again, we define diversity as it doesn't matter someone's background, what they look like, how old they are. It's all of those differences that we need on our team. We also need those individuals to feel that they have a safe space, which we're going to talk about here this morning as well, but that they have a safe space to express themselves authentically. We want to bring, and we want everyone to bring their authentic selves to work each and every day. So all four components of the equation are very essential, and they are linked, and they need to coexist to create the best employee experience possible. So if you're a manager on the line, or even if you are not, managers play a pivotal role in belonging. Employees who trust their leaders believe that they care about them as individuals and that they listen to their perspectives, and they experience a high sense of belonging. So feeling supported and adapting to organizational changes is one of the top influencers of having a sense of belonging. So to focus on belonging at work means that we need to create intentional connections. We need to build trusting relationships and bring in diverse perspectives into our conversations, into the decision-making that happens in the workplace. We want to encourage everyone to share their own personal story. I have many of them. And a part of belonging means we are open to hearing about a person's experiences and those challenges that they have faced. Trust me, there were times where I thought that I was all along. Oh, it's just happening to me. Well, I've been enlightened. Some of the experiences that I have experienced, other people have as well. And being able to share those experiences, as I have over the past few years, has actually helped me to grow. And I know it's helped some of those individuals that I've come in contact with. So now that I've done a really deep dive into the acronym, how do we get started? Maybe organizations haven't quite started in their DE&I journey, and it is a journey that never stops, it's ongoing. And so we want to talk about how to start that journey. Very often, organizations make a decision that we're going to have DE&I work, and the first thing they request of me is, can you come and do some DE&I training? Well, yes, I can. But is that what we really need to do first? What's the purpose of the training? And I have people tell me, you told them no? I was like, yeah, I told them no. Absolutely, because I want to help them be better, to help them do better. And we need to see eye to eye on how we're going to do that. And so I want them to take a step back and look at some of the things that are needed and required. So yes, while training is most often necessary, training alone does not mean the DEI work for the company is complete. Nor will training in most cases fix the issues for organizations that lack those DE&I programs and that lack an inclusive environment. So first, be honest about why you desire to start a DE&I program. Is it because other companies are starting or have started DE&I programs? Is it because you've noticed high turnover among certain groups, maybe certain genders or certain ethnic backgrounds, minorities, certain generations? Or maybe you've received a number of employee complaints. Whatever it is, make sure you're honest with yourself about the why, the reason why you are starting a DE&I program. What is the reason? Be intentional with why you feel the need to implement DE&I into your organization. And think about the purpose of your DE&I program. Answering these questions will help you in building a case for diversity, equity, and inclusion. So why do you think we need to have a case to present DE&I to our stakeholders? The answer would be, it's an investment. It's a long-term commitment. It is a journey. It's an investment in resources, people resources, time, talent, energy, money. Not too many things today is free. So it's always going to cost something. And our senior leaders want to know what's in it for the company. Why are we doing this? And how much is it going to cost me? Think about how many times you've walked into an executive leader's office. And if they're in there in front of their computer, what's up on the computer screen? Usually it's a spreadsheet with a whole bunch of numbers. And you're like, oh my goodness, at least I know I have in the past. Lots of numbers. We need to be able to show numbers. We have to be able to talk to our executive leadership and show them so that they will understand. And we have to do it so it's relative to them. And of course, and we'll talk a little bit, but there are many reasons why we may need to build a case for diversity and inclusion, and just making sure that our stakeholders truly understand why it's important for us to embark on our DE&I journeys in our organizations. And another reason is that it will help us outline a plan for our journey. Think about how many times, at least I know I've heard, oftentimes since, say, the latter part of 2020, many organizations invested in hiring diversity and inclusion or diversity, equity, and inclusion officers in the organizations. Many of them are not still in those positions today. And maybe they didn't start the right way. And so, and I know several that no, I left, or I didn't feel like I was making an impact. And so maybe they didn't start right. So again, very often organizations make a decision for DE&I work, and they talk about training, or they just start and they hire someone, but they don't really ask themselves, why are they doing it? What's the purpose and what's needed? So those are three critical things as starting your DE&I journeys in your organizations, or if you've already began, which a lot of you probably have, propelling your DE&I programs forward, making sure that what you've put in place is still working, or do you need to pivot? So here are just some reasons that could be the why you would want to put DE&I in your organization. Having a diverse, equitable, inclusive, and an environment where employees feel belong will likely increase the engagement, enablement, and satisfaction of your employees. Research shows that lower attrition oftentimes is a result of the environment that individuals work in when they have an environment where they feel valued. Also, customer retention. Think about the customers that your organization does business with. What does the organization look like? Do you have individuals in your organization who have some personal characteristics that resemble some of those salespeople or some of the customer reps in your organization that they are having to deal with? People want to be able to have that relationship and have something in common, some correlation. And I have known organizations that will ask, what does your DE&I program look like? We're huge on LGBTQ plus community in our organization. We're huge on accessibility for those with disabilities. So lots of times customers will ask those things, and it will be part of their decision making as to whether or not they do business with your organization. Also, increase creativity and more innovative solutions when you have a diverse group of employees, when you have people with different experiences, different backgrounds, experience from different industries, different age groups. So you can increase your creativity and your innovation in your organization, which could very much result in being more competitive in your environment. Additionally, increased revenue. So yes, money is always important, but please don't implement a DE&I program just because of the money. Research does show that 1.4 times an increase in revenue when companies have diversity in their organization, when companies have an inclusive organization. Do it because ultimately it is the right thing to do. So now, how do you get started? I've asked myself the questions. This is something we want to do. Yes, we want lower attrition. We want to be more competitive, and the revenue don't sound bad either. What do you need to get started? So, data. You need data. You need numbers. You need information. You know the purpose now, but you need information. So, and this list is not all inclusive. These are, I think, 9 pieces of data here, but they will tell you a lot. Data tells stories. So look at the demographics in your organization. What does your demographics look like? How does the demographics resemble your customer base or your community base? When you're looking at the demographics, what does it tell you? I have worked for an organization before that had wonderful, robust affirmative action plans, But when you look at the granular data, the minority employees were the lowest paid employees in the organization. So look at the demographics. Compare that to the roles in your organization. Compare it to the levels in your organization. Go back and ask yourself the question again, why? Why does it look this way? How did we get here? And how do we get away from being here if the numbers don't look like what you're wanting them to look like? Look at compensation data. Look at your employees. Use the demographics, but use the compensation as well. How are we compensating our employees? What does the pay look like relative to females in the organization, relative to the Latin community, the other minorities? What does the pay look like based off of generational differences, based off of someone or individuals who belong to the LGBTQ plus community? Also look at performance reviews. Performance reviews can tell you a lot, especially if they're written well, and they all should be written well. But look at those performance reviews. Maybe they're not written well because the people who've gotten the high performance reviews are pretty good friends with the person who reviewed them. It happens, you all. I've seen it. I know that it happens. But look at those performance reviews. Are they fair? Are we creating equitable reviews in our organization? Look at your promotions data. What does the promotions tell you? Who in your organization was considered for a promotion? Do you have a succession plan? And what does it look like? Who's on the succession plan? What are their gaps? What are those personal characteristics of those who are not on your succession plan or those who are but have gaps? Training opportunities. Consider what opportunities you've given in your organization, which ones you have not. Oftentimes I'll hear, yes, this person's a great worker, but they're not ready for this role. Well, why aren't they? Did they not get the same training opportunity that someone else in your organization received? Maybe they didn't get that middle management position and you feel that they need to stay there as a frontline leader. They didn't move up into a manager or middle level or director role yet. So no, you don't want to put them in, say, a VP position because they hadn't been in a middle manager role. Well, why haven't they? So look at those pieces of data. Assess your recruiting practices. We're going to talk about that, as I said, at the end, but look at the numbers, look at the data. Who's applied? Do you have demographic information on your applicants, internal and external? Who are your recruiters? What biases exist within your recruiting staff? Who's doing your interviews? Who's doing your exit interviews? And what are you doing with the exit interview information? Exit interviews are helpful and should be used. However, sometimes it's too late. Okay, sometimes it's too late to retain someone once you've done an exit interview. Most often that's their last day, or they've got a foot already out the door. So use the information from your exit interviews, but also consider doing stay interviews. Have interviews with employees within the first year of hiring them, maybe the first 6 months, whatever works for your organization. A 30, 45-minute interview with your newer hires to find out how things are going, what's going well, what's not going well, what surprises have they encountered that they were not expecting when they joined your organization. So exit interviews, stay interviews, and of course, your interviews, your hiring interviews, which I'm not going to steal my own thunder for later on as I talk about talent recruiting. And then focus groups. What does the information that you've heard in your focus groups tell you? And when you're hosting or having focus groups, make sure this is one of the times that you can separate your individual contributors from your management team. I highly recommend you not mix them together when you're having a focus group. Even consider further separating levels of leadership if necessary. So if you are, an organization where you have 4 or 5 levels of leadership before you even get to a senior VP or another executive role, consider even separating those levels as well. And then, what are your employee engagement surveys telling you? Do you do them because that's what we do, and we do them every year or every 2 years, but we don't do anything with them, or we plan, but then we don't initiate our plans. We don't see them from start to finish. Who do we involve when we have employee survey planning as well is very important as well. So use the data from your surveys. They are costly to your organization, and they will provide you with lots of information. Are there any questions before I move on? Let me check the chat. Okay, I don't see any here. All right, so now you've put your numbers together, you've got your data, you're painting a story because your numbers already tell you a story, and you've got to present that information to your executive leaders. Leaders will need to understand that it's time to invest in building a diverse, equitable, inclusive, and belonging place to work for employees. And in most cases, again, leaders want to know the why and how much it's going to cost them on the journey. And so for us to understand how to build that case of DEI and B, we've talked about using the data. We talked about really asking the why. But we also want to make sure we fully understand the DEI and the B piece, which we've already talked about that here today. And so we still need to make sure that we are focusing on ensuring that we become not just a more diverse organization, but making sure that we focus on diversity dimensions. It's very common for us to focus on gender, ethnicity, but it is more than that. And we must include strategies for bringing more into our culture and focusing on people with disabilities, ensuring we are multi-generational, we're being inclusive of LGBTQ employees, people of varying faiths, people with different industry backgrounds and different backgrounds on their own as well. And so whenever you put together your DE&I pitch or proposal to your leaders, make sure, this will be a big selling point, make sure that your goals and the mission, your vision and your mission for your DE&I programs align to the organization's overall vision and mission. They need to align. Leaders want to know what's in it for me, what's in it for the organization. So make sure those align. Make sure you're able to paint some of the benefits of having DE&I and B in your organization. And there are tons of benefits. I mentioned financial performance. More ethnically diverse companies are usually 35% more likely to have better financial returns. And gender diverse companies are usually 15% more likely to have better financial outcomes. Of course, it creates a strong employer brand when you are able to focus your DE&I B and you have a shared with the world, with your whole organization, and you're being able to highlight that your organization is an employer of choice because we foster diversity, we foster inclusivity as well. People want to work for diverse companies. So do believe me, when candidates are looking to apply for positions, they're going out on your website. They're looking at who are the board of directors. And diversity needs to be that high in your organization. It doesn't just start with the senior executives, it's higher than that. It goes as high as your board of directors. And most often on websites, that's what you see. You see the background and the pictures of the board of directors. People want to work for diverse companies. 67% of job seekers care about diversity when looking for a job. Another benefit is, as I stated earlier, it fosters innovation, but also growth. Diverse companies bring diverse perspectives, and diverse companies bring more diverse customers and partnerships. Research shows that diverse companies are 70% more likely to capture a new market. And of course, increased employee engagement, as I already mentioned also, but a Gallup study revealed that disengaged employees cost your companies collectively, this is all companies, 350 billion with a B, dollars per year in lost productivity. Disengaged employees cost companies collectively $350 billion each year in lost productivity. So you could go on with sharing with your executives to get their buy-in as to some benefits of having a diverse organization and having DE&I programs within your culture. Investing in a DE&I program will take some serious consideration for what will work for your organization and why behind the decision. Every company should begin the process to invest in DEI and B programs for very many reasons, and I've only shared a few reasons. And hopefully you've already started your journey, but if you haven't, it's okay. Start now. Unfortunately, many companies are, still at a place where they haven't started the journey, or they have, but they don't know how to move forward. And the unfortunate events that we experienced in the US in 2020 pushed many leaders to saying that they need to act and do something quickly. And that's what they did, but then we're stuck. We think about the social injustices, which have been at the top of the list for many leaders, at least it was a couple of years ago. And hopefully it still is, because it's still a problem. It hasn't gone away. But social injustices towards minority workers, towards certain communities. Also, a lot of people experienced a shift in their personal and professional lives since 2020. And those challenges have left many people with time to really reflect, especially those who maybe were impacted by a layoff or a company closing or a furlough. And so with the pandemic of 2020 and all of the residual impact of the pandemic, it created a sense of uncertainty for many employees. It created a sense of uncertainty for many companies as well. So having a strong diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging program is a great way to increase the level of belonging with your employees. Think about multi-generational shifts. We have in our organization today 5 different generations still working, and that's not something we've always had. And so there is a difference. We have more younger workers that are beginning to work, and the data reveals that Gen Z employees want diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging in the companies that they work for. And not only do they want it, they are very bold. They will hold employers accountable for such. So not saying that other generations will not and don't care, but Gen Zs, as well as millennials, place a very high value on DEI and B cultures and really care about the social injustices of the world. And last, your competition. Your competition may already have the wheels rolling, and you have to have a competitive advantage. And you can have a competitive advantage when you have different thoughts. You've made everyone feel included, because not fostering an inclusive sense of belonging, you may have the employees, but they're not going to speak up. They're not going to share their thoughts and their ideas. And we do need diverse thinking in our organizations. And when it's not there, people leave companies. I know it all too well myself. People leave companies, people will leave and go work somewhere else. So just looking at this spectrum, think about the existing cost for the stakeholders, the benefits. You want to be able to measure the work that's being done. The work that's being done obviously needs to, as I stated earlier, align with the company's vision and mission. And start small. I think lots of time we have this big thought process about DE&I programs, and it is a journey and it can be big. Start small. Don't try to start too many ERGs at one time or 5 different things going on from a DE&I perspective in one organization at one time, especially if you do not have the capacity to do so or don't have the know-how to get it started. So make sure that you have the right resources, but start small and then grow your DEI and B programs along the way. You cannot tackle everything at once. Choose an area that you want to start and focus on that area. Focus on an area for a little while before shifting and adding other things. Look for opportunities for quick wins and being able to win over your leadership team and your employees and getting all engaged, because it's all of our responsibility to help create an inclusive environment. So here are some additional benefits. Diverse cultural perspectives can inspire creativity and drive innovation. So when you hire people and have teams that are diverse, you are fostering a different environment, one where there are many different perspectives at the table, making decisions, collaborating, and brainstorming on the next big thing for your company. By having people of diverse backgrounds at the table, they are bound to bring different ways of thinking and more innovative ideas to the group. And while it may seem intimidating to have this problem, or for some managers, it's actually what you want. Research indicates that diverse teams will see 60% improvement in decision-making. Having a multicultural workplace will help as a company expands into more markets. If you are expanding operations overseas, it is always an advantage to have more local connections, people with varying language skills and cultural understanding. This will allow your company to be more competitive and profitable as you are able to expand your product offering. And as you are expanding and wanting to target different groups, have cultural sensitivity, insight, and local knowledge will be helpful. Think about how you advertise in the United States may vastly differ somewhere else. So therefore, potentially having a native person as an employee to help in these instances are beneficial to your company. This is also helpful in designing, or how you design to make sure that taglines are appropriate for certain areas. I think of a story that I dare to share on this call that I saw last year of a ginger product, and I'll just leave it at that. You all can take the word ginger and kind of transcribe that and use those 6 letters and see what you may come up with. And so that's what the advertisement looked like. So I'll let you all do that at your lunchtime, but take the word ginger and see if you can create another word that could be offensive in many markets. So also, even in the US, there are times when one may sell something different than in another part of the country. Anybody ever been to a Target and something in Target at home, and we don't have this in North Carolina, and you're wondering, why is it different? And then you come back to North Carolina looking for it, and you wish you had purchased it, but you didn't want to put it on in your suitcase because you'd have been over 50 pounds and you'd had to pay extra money. So things like that. But do think about those things. Things are different from one part of the country to the other. So think about how it is outside of the US. Also, embracing diversity in your culture will lead to easier hiring. If you are more open to diversity in your workplace, you have a wider pool to pull from. Gen Zs and millennials are going to be the larger demographic group working in organizations very soon, and a larger percentage of these groups identify, believe it or not, as non-white. So if you're looking to hire the best, you have to focus your attention on your diversity recruiting. Make sure you are not implementing unrealistic requirements for your positions. Why are we putting GPA minimums on job postings? Or we're setting certain degrees that really isn't a requirement, because that will lower your candidate pool. And I am going to add here that sometimes organizations think that they are hitting this mark here, and oh, you're right, maybe we don't need bachelor's degrees. We're going to add an associate's degree. Well, you just made the pool even smaller because they don't teach our juniors and seniors in high school to go to the local community college at CPCC. They celebrate those 4-year scholarships, academic scholarships, sports scholarships or athletic scholarships. They don't typically celebrate those, signing up to go into the military to serve our country. But then you put an associate's degree on there, and you've just excluded a large pool of candidates, because most people will pursue a bachelor's degree. They may not finish. They may have completed 2 or 3 years. Now they're not applying for your job because you asked for an associate's degree and they don't have it, but they have more years, or what they have equates to an associate's degree. So be mindful of little things like that as well when you are recruiting. Another point here is cultural fit. Oftentimes people will say, oh, they don't fit our culture. They've never worked in X industry before. Why do we need that? Is that a requirement? Maybe we need someone with different industry experience to come into our organization. I oftentimes will challenge people and they'll say, oh, well, the accountant needs to have X software. Why? Can you not teach them? Did you have it 5 years ago before your company got it? You may have had the accounting background and experience, but did you have it? So also, a diverse skill base allows an organization to offer a broader and more adaptable range of products and services. So hiring people from varying demographic groups are ultimately going to bring more skills into your workplace. Think of it from the standpoint, say Gen Z group will bring different skills, or various ethnic groups may bring different skills, different cultural experiences, different language, and so forth. And women may bring a different skill than men. So all of this will lead to higher competition for your organization. And so with homogeneous teams may be easier to manage, the fact is diverse teams work better and generate more productivity and financial performance. Companies with more ethnic and racial diversity in management or typically 35% more likely to have higher financial performance. So I've said that 3 times already because we know numbers. In order to operate, we have to have the funds as well. An inclusive and culturally diverse team will lead to personal and professional growth. Those diverse teams will allow people to connect with others from different backgrounds, and they have the opportunity to grow and learn about different cultures. So this may help to abandon some of those biases or prejudices that people have. And we all have biases. I always raise both hands because I have biases. We do. We all have biases. We definitely all have unconscious biases. So sometimes we can eliminate or reduce those biases we have when we interact with people who are different from us outside of our normal social circles. And there are tons more, you all, that can build the case for a diverse culture. So not necessarily going through all of these in detail because some of them I've hit on already, but this is just a step-by-step guide that you can take starting with self-reflection all the way moving to the presence. But just take some time to explore your own reasons for wanting DEI and B in your workplace. Understand your why and begin the journey. Begin somewhere and begin small. Understand your journey for a DEI and B mindset. Take some time to read, have conversations with people outside of your in group, and learn and absorb as much as you can. Understand why it's important for your company to begin or be on the continual DEI and B journey. There's so many reasons. Use information that we've talked about, your notes, your information from those stay interviews, those exit interviews, the focus groups, and so forth. Look at your turnover data, your hiring numbers. Compare non-minority and non-minority hires. Compare the minority and non-minority exits as well, just as an example. And then looking at the demographics, like I said, from gender, ethnicity, generational, LGBTQ, veterans, disabled. Educate yourself. Take a snapshot of what your workplace looks like. And then what do you want it to look like? Pull some statistics. As you all may have noticed that as a professor, I use statistics, I use facts. And so pull research. It doesn't have to be, oh my goodness, Darricka is sending us to school and we've got to go get textbooks. No, you can go on different platforms, reputable platforms online and pull information and statistics. Think about the benefits, excuse me, you all, the benefits as well, and measure. Okay, determine some small things that you can measure early on. You will need to have measurements as to how well your programs or your initiatives are working. What percentage of leaders are participating in your DE&I programs or your DE&I training? What percentage of diverse candidates are in your total pool of applicants? So use numbers for different things. Celebrate those short wins, you all. Celebrate them. Don't wait till you're at the end of the journey, because guess what? You won't get to the end of the journey. Remember, I said it's ongoing. So if you wait to celebrate, you'll be retired and you'll never get to celebrate. So celebrate the short wins. Okay. And always, present your information, your findings, your data, your results to your senior leaders, as well as throughout your organization. When we have DE&I programs or ERG programs and people don't see results for those programs, they're wondering, why do we have them? And then the participation will drop. It will decrease. So to get the buy-in, you got to present. When you present your information, anticipate hesitancy Anticipate questions and how you can respond effectively to those questions. And when the questions come up that you don't know, be honest and say, I don't know, but I will get back to you, and do what you say you're going to do. You can gain the buy-in from, and you will have to gain the buy-in from your executives so that the whole organization is able to participate. You need to solicit sponsorship from executives, those who have a seat at the table. The sponsorship could be on rotation. Someone may say, oh, I don't want to commit to this. I'm not retiring for another 9 years. I'm stuck. No, you're never stuck, but we need you. But it could be a rotational thing. So consider 18 to 24 months rotational and be working on someone else to backfill that sponsorship role. And always be committed to your mission and your vision of your DE&I program that's going to be aligned to your organization's overall mission and vision. So I've talked about a lot here. Before I move on for these last 20 minutes, does anyone have any questions? So we're going to dive into the culture piece. So what is culture? Culture is defined as a collection of attitudes, beliefs, traditions, interactions, and desired behaviors that launch the group, that become the norms in your work environment. And therefore, sometimes they become non-negotiable. This is how we've done it all along. Why do we need to change now? If you haven't heard that before, come hang out with me. For 24 hours is all it'll take. You'll hear it. Okay, so to understand how to increase cultural competency, we must first understand how those cultures are formed in our organizations. And all organizations have a culture. It may not be the culture you're looking for, but they all have a culture. So a part of building the whole case of DEI and B is understanding cultural competence. And cultural competence will be a major part of the journey as an organization. Cultural competence, again, is defined as the ability to understand, to appreciate, and interact with people from cultures or belief systems that are different from your own. And there are several parts to being culturally competent. Keep in mind, every person will have their own journey to cultural competencies. My journey will look different from yours, and yours will look different from someone else. So cultural awareness is two pieces to it: awareness of your own beliefs, values, biases, stereotypes, and behaviors, and the same for other people. Being aware means that you are willing to do your part of what drives yourself and other people. Cultural knowledge is the process of understanding how your behaviors and biases are different from others. It allows you to self-reflect and understand differences that exist between you and between others. It can be accomplished by having meaningful conversations with people, asking questions, listening, and just genuinely engaging with someone. You have to be aware that there are differences and we can learn from differences. Cultural sensitivity. Now, this part helps you to determine if you're open, and not just you, I'm saying you, but that's for anyone in your organization, is open to accepting and respecting differences. This is where you can do some real self-reflection and ask yourself, can I accept differences? If not, why can't you? What will be the challenges for you? What is an important piece? Because a person cannot be culturally competent if they cannot pass that part. So being more open and more accepting. That doesn't mean we change our values and our beliefs. We just have to understand the differences and being respectful and sensitive to the differences of other people. And then that whole cultural competence is the ability to accept, appreciate, understand the differences. And it's also your opportunity to figure out what adjustments that you may need to make to effectively operate in a different cultural context. And here are some benefits of cultural competence. Varying ideas, perspectives, and strategies increase creativity, broader range of adaptable products and services within your organization. It builds your own self-awareness. It builds confidence that you're able to relate to others. You understand more about others' cultures, others' differences, others' beliefs. It helps to build trust and cooperation. It will help reduce barriers that you may have, a shift in mindset. You can also attract and retain great people when you understand those differences, and it promotes equity and inclusion. So part of cultural competence is also fostering an environment where all of your employees feel safe. Psychological safety is being able to be yourself, take risks, and discuss uncomfortable topics without the fear of being punished or humiliated. Psychologically safe teams or people feel accepted. They also feel respected. And according to the Center for Creative Leadership, a lack of psychological safety at work has a major business repercussion. If employees are not talking about things that are not working, then the company cannot fight it to prevent failure. Or if when employees are not fully committed to sharing their experiences, the organization will lose in the end. So when there is psychological safety at work, people will feel comfortable being themselves and will bring their full selves to work, and they will contribute openly. Feeling safe is part of feeling belonged. Check in with your people. See how they're doing. Take a moment to check in with someone and see how they're doing. Find out how their weekend went. Maybe you heard that they have a family member who wasn't feeling well or had to have surgery. Check in on your people. And especially if you have a remote or dispersed team, check in with your people. Okay? You can make more, you may have to make more effort when you have a dispersed or remote team. Check in on your people. Give them a call, send them an email, send them a quick chat, whatever it may be. Make sure your people have a voice. Imagine being in a meeting and feeling like you didn't belong there. Most likely one of your peers has felt that way before too. So make sure you're creating a space where people feel comfortable sharing and voicing their opinions. And if you are a leader or you are the facilitator of a meeting and you have an agenda plan, have you ever had your agenda hijacked? Because you always have that person who talks all the time and they speak up for everybody. And so we just know that that person's going to speak up for us and we're not going to share because it's going to go their way. So make sure you are giving everyone a voice. Go around the room and ask. I'll use the names. Pat, do you have any input? Jessica, Sydney, Sean, David, Celine, and so forth. Make sure that you are giving everyone an opportunity. Celebrate self-identity. Know that everyone is different and will bring their own uniqueness to work every day. A large number of people say one thing they like about their company is that they have a culture that promotes individualism and employees being themselves. So throw away the concept of that's not professional or professional work attire. What is that? And where did that come from anyway? Who said what hairstyle was professional and what hairstyle isn't professional? What hair color is professional or nail color? Who said it's not professional? So be mindful of those things. Celebrate everyone's self-identity. And we can start that by allowing people to be themselves as they show up for work. Now, of course, there's going to be some obvious things within reason. If your company prohibits, say, skirts of a certain short length, then we get that, or torn clothing that may not necessarily be appropriate. But think about when we say it's not professional, what does professional really mean? And where did that term come from to begin with? Ask for input from all employees. As I stated, go around the room and say Pat, Jessica, Sean, Sydney, David, Celine, and so forth. Brittany, I know Brittany, Angela, I see some names that I've seen before. And then encourage your resource groups, employee resource groups, affinity groups, or professional groups. And so these are groups that should be employee-led, but sponsored by an executive, someone who has a seat at the table. You can start employee resource groups or affinity groups by engaging the interest of your employees. Send out a survey and figure out, where to begin. What did you hear more frequently? Where were the themes? Was it around religious beliefs or identities, LGBTQ, whatever it may be? You may have affinity groups around certain professions. Maybe it's some for MBAs or financials or engineers or whatever it may be. Make your affinity groups voluntary for your employees and that they are run by your employees, again, sponsored by your executives. Always set ground rules. Set ground rules for meetings, set ground rules for conversations. People need to feel safe and have that psychological safe space where they can talk about sensitive topics without the fear of judgment or conflict. And what's the goal of your employee resource group? Before you create it, you need to have some goals. Set, document, and communicate goals to foster accountability within the group. Again, it's employee-led, so it's not for you to set those goals. It is for that employee resource group and those members. It may be a networking group. Consider how frequently are we meeting? Are we meeting too frequently? Maybe start out with once a month. Share the agenda. Solicit others to join. Some allies, some supporters. Consider lunch and learns and conferences as well. Utilize your company intranet, bulletin boards, Slack channels, social media, whatever you may use for communicating in your organizations. Communicate to everyone. Include everyone, exclude no one. You want non-members with non-identifying characteristics to participate in your employee resource groups. They need to learn as well. They need to learn from for people who are different from them from those employee resource groups. Maybe if you have an employee resource group that's around accessibility for those with disability, it doesn't have to be your employee has a disability, but maybe they want to learn the nuances and be able to get support because perhaps they have a child who is considered disabled. So those are just some examples. And as I stated, allies, and don't be afraid to pivot. Regroup if necessary. If something is not working, it's okay to just take a step back and regroup. Here are just some quick additional ideas for fostering an inclusive environment. Offer flexible work arrangements. Does everybody have to come to work 8 to 5? Is that completely necessary? Because we're so used to our 8 to 5s. Make sure that you're looking at your employment policies and realigning those. Stop using his/her because everyone doesn't identify as a his or her. Say they. So use gender neutral terminology. Make sure your policies are inclusive. I've seen companies try to do the right thing and they'll create a policy and they will say, I need your help with a paternity policy. And I'm like, so is this not for moms as well? Maybe you meant parental policy? Stop calling it paternity policy or paternal policy. It's parental policy. So be mindful of those things. Offer flexible benefits. Many organizations will offer benefits to partners of employees. Create a sponsorship program or mentorship program. You can have cultural awareness training. And also think about listening. Going around, having leaders or whoever it may be to go around to your locations and listen. Hear what employees have to say. So this is what that looks like all together. And I won't go into it due to time, but just all together, this is what the cultural transformation model could look like for your organization and things to consider along your journey. So the last piece that I added that I want to go through really quickly is the diversity recruiting, because it's often asked, where do I go? And it is an important piece of being able to have a diverse pool. The goal really is to just create a larger diverse candidate pool, not necessarily saying you have to hire someone because they are a diverse candidate. I am going to tell you from a lawful standpoint, that cannot be the reason lawfully to hire someone just because they are a diverse candidate. Think about how interviews are done. Pay attention to the methods that are used and train your hiring managers and your recruiters on how to, it should say mitigate, because you can't eliminate. You can eliminate biases, but you can't eliminate unconscious biases, but how to deal with our biases when they creep up on us. Make sure we're being objective when we are assessing our candidates. Think about how we're posting the positions. Job descriptions, think about the language. Are you using gender neutral language? Typically, research shows that males gravitate towards more aggressive terminology, and females will gravitate to more of the cooperative, dependent, the softer languages as well. Assess how you're sourcing candidates or your organization assess candidates. Screen your candidates fairly. When you're interviewing candidates, who's on the interview panel? Who's evaluating, and what are you evaluating candidates off of? Hopefully, it's all about their capabilities and experience and potential experience, those are capabilities to do the job. Should never be about any characteristics. And stop saying, I don't think they're a good fit. What does that mean? What does fit mean in your organization? Maybe you need someone who's not a good fit to give more balance to your team. So think about you all, your unconscious biases that you may have and how it could affect your hiring. Anybody ever heard someone say, oh yeah, we got to hire that person. He got to speak our language because y'all graduated from the same university. Our unconscious biases affect our behaviors, our attitudes, attention, and our perception. And it does matter. It does matter how we show up in our organizations and how we represent our organizations. It matters in how we treat our employees as well. So avoid hiring on using our biases, or avoid bias in hiring by implementing an applicant tracking system. If you don't have, I know a lot of times smaller organizations may not have a way to completely track, but today most often organizations do. You can consider blind resumes by removing the name, because a lot of times names is an indication of potentially someone's gender, race. So remove them. I didn't want a woman for that role. I wanted a man, or I didn't want a man. I wanted a woman. Remove the names. Set diversity goals in your organization, goals of how you will do things, not goals of how many you will hire that are female or male or from the military and so forth. Consider cross-functional interviewing teams, and conduct unconscious bias assessments. There are UB assessments available. You can find them online and so forth, where you can do your own assessment, but you can assess yourself by just asking, what biases do I have? And I have them. I have unconscious biases. And years ago, I recognized what I had, and you can work on eliminating or mitigating, really mitigating your unconscious biases, eliminating your biases. Here are some diverse recruitment sources. I won't read through those. Feel free to capture them, screenshot those, or take a picture. But these are just some organizations where you can consider seeking candidates. And lastly, perfect timing because I'm down to my last 45 seconds here. Create a checklist, okay, for fostering an inclusive environment. And it should include at least these 4 things. So I am going to check the chat and see if anyone has any questions. I don't think I see any out there, but I'm going to open it up for questions. We've talked about DEI equation that equals the B and having all 4 components, understanding the why and the importance of diversity, equity, and inclusion, and that it is everyone's responsibility. And just start. Start small, but start. Think about how you'll show up every day for your colleagues and your employees. And what did you hear today, if anything, and I hope it was more than just one thing, that you would go back and share with a colleague? Are there any questions?
Wow, Dr. Sorrells, that was very, very engaging and informative. I think that was the stats that you gave, I think are going to be just the whole presentation is going to be so helpful for folks out there. If folks would like to pop up a question, let us know. But while you're thinking of them, I just wanted to make sure I took time to thank you, Dr. Sorrells, for sharing with us today, and to thank our sponsors, our program sponsor, Duke Energy, for continuing to partner with us in this important work, and our platinum sponsor for today, Atrium Health. Thank you, both organizations, for all you do to support our community. If anybody has anything, pop it in the chat. If not, yeah, no question, because you laid it all out there. Very informative. Thank you, Dr. Sorrells.
Thank you. Yes, I knew that would take up the full time because it was a lot of information to touch on, but I do believe very important information. And I too want to piggyback Jessica and thank the sponsors for your support, as well as thanking Union County for having me here. So thank you, Union County Chamber, and thank you all for joining and showing up this morning and giving us a whole hour and a half of your workday.
Yeah, thank you. And for I will, once I get the recording edited, it will be live, and I'll send you all a link to it. So thank you and have a great day.